Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and in this video I'll be talking about the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, originally published April 2nd, 2005 by Del Rey, written by Matthew Stover, and clocking in at 451 pages. And in this video I'll be talking about the mass market paperback. Here is my physical copy of Revenge of the Sith. And I bought this, actually probably bought this almost 2 years ago now, but I didn't get around to reading it until this past spring. I have to say, I really do enjoy that cover design. It's pretty good. And I like this style of paperback for the Star Wars books. There's the spine and back of the book. So, pretty cool. As combat escalates across the galaxy, the stage is set for an explosive endgame. Obi-Wan undertakes a perilous mission to destroy the dreaded Separatist military leader, General Grievous. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine continues to strip away constitutional liberties in the name of security, while influencing public opinion to turn against the Jedi. And a conflicted Anakin fears that his secret love, Senator Padme Amidala, will die. Tormented by unspeakable visions, Anakin edges closer to the brink of a galaxy-shaping decision. It remains only for Darth Sidious to strike the final staggering blow against the Republic and to ordain a fearsome new Sith Lord, Darth Vader. Based on the screenplay of the final film in George Lucas's epic saga, best-selling Star Wars author Matthew Stover's novel crackles with action, captures the iconic characters in all their complexity, and brings a space opera masterpiece full circle in a stunning style. I've probably read maybe 13 to 15 Star Wars books over the years, and I've always enjoyed the EU. It's something that's always done a good job of filling that gap between Star Wars movies, because you had that gap of about 16 to 17 years from Return of the Jedi to The Phantom Menace, where there was nothing, there was no new movies, and it's not like now there wasn't any TV shows or anything like that, so there was nothing live action. We just had the books, the novels, and the video games, and some cartoons here and there, like droids and Ewoks and things like that. So the EU has always done a good job of filling that void, of easing that hunger that you had for more Star Wars while in between movies. Now, this book wasn't really on my radar, Revenge of the Sith, because I was never really into novelizations of movies I've already seen. I have read some in the past, but they're not always something I really went out of my way to go and read, because once you've seen the movie, you know, I find it kind of pointless to read the book because, well, you know what's going to happen. The book's already spoiled, so for me, it doesn't really make it that interesting of a read. But this book was recommended to me by another YouTuber, Michael Mercy. I watched his review and left a comment there, and he said, like, you really have to read this book. It's fixes some of the problems of Revenge of the Sith. So I went out and picked up a copy. Overall, I think this is a good book. And it fixes two issues I have with Revenge of the Sith as a film. First issue it fixes is the dialogue. So all the dialogue in this book has been rewritten. And in my personal opinion, it's much better than the dialogue we hear in the film Revenge of the Sith. So one of the things that the prequels have been criticized for over the years, and George Lucas himself, is how bad the dialogue is in the prequel films. Like you had that famous one from A Phantom Menace, "Are you an angel?" and stuff like that. And you have the same thing in Revenge of the Sith. You have really cheesy dialogue. I think probably from my viewing experience, the worst one is Attack of the Clones. That one has some really cheesy dialogue, but not only cheesy, but really cringy stuff. Like when Anakin's professing his love to Padme and all that, it just comes off really cringy. But there's one line in Revenge of the Sith that, even upon my first viewing, just totally struck me as off. It just sounded weird. It didn't sound right. It was, I don't know if it's Hayden Christensen's delivery of it or how it's written. I don't know what it is, but it's at the end of the film, and Obi-Wan Kenobi has the high ground, and he warns Anakin, Anakin, it's over. I have the high ground. Anakin's too arrogant and won't listen. And his response is, you underestimate my power. And the way the line comes out, it's almost like the way he says it. It's almost like, you underestimate my power, or something like that. It sounds really brutal. Like, the delivery of it is brutal. I've always found that. And it's something that's always stood out to me every time I've rewatched that movie. So like I said, this book fixes that. The second thing it fixes, and this is something that I've always, for me, I don't know if other people feel this way or not, but it's something that I've always found personally, is I never found Anakin's character arc or his fall to the dark side very convincing or very well done. You have the Phantom Menace, which deals with, really doesn't deal with Anakin's fall at all, because he's a little kid throughout that whole movie, and he doesn't interact with Palpatine, so you really don't start to get hints of that until the second movie. And in the second movie, you see that Anakin's kind of arrogant and cocky, and he's given Obi-Wan Kenobi attitude, and that he slaughters the Sand People. And then there's only one scene of him and Palpatine interacting, and you kind of see that Palpatine's has become this father figure. So it seems like the story that me personally I wanted to see, and a lot of other fans wanted to see, Anakin's fall to the dark side, all had to be crammed in Revenge of the Sith. So you had to do it all in that one movie, which it's not impossible to do. Other movies have done it. Like, one movie that did it, I think it did it excellent and perfect, is The Godfather. Michael Corleone's fall to the dark side in that movie. Now that is a fall to the dark side. If I had to compare it to like Anakin's character arc to another character arc, like when I compare it to Luke Skywalker's, like I think Luke Skywalker has a very good character arc in the 3 movies. You can clearly see, and it's believable, how he progresses from this whiny guy with no patience and all this kind of thing, who's almost to the point where he's irritating in the first movie, to becoming this mature, wise, powerful Jedi at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like, it's very convincing, where Anakin's, to me, was never believable and always felt clunky. And then you had Rey's character arc in the Disney sequel trilogy, which her character arc always felt very flat, very boring, like there wasn't much of an arc there, because her character didn't really change much through those movies. So I think Luke Skywalker, out of the 3 trilogies, to me, personally anyway, has the best character arc. Now, what this novel does is this novel kind of fixes that. Anakin's fall to the dark side is much more believable. You kind of get more into Anakin's head and how he thinks. Not only that, but how Palpatine thinks. It's kind of how Palpatine is manipulating him. You kind of get, and their conversations are much more dynamic and much more, like, they have much more breathing room in the book. So you can see in a much better way how Palpatine is manipulating Anakin to the dark side. So those were the 2 major things, the major problems I've always had with Revenge of the Sith. But I think this book actually does a fair job of fixing that. The last thing that I wanted to talk about that I really liked about this book, and this is what I liked the most about this book. Now, I talked earlier about how this book does a better job, in my opinion, than the film, of showing Anakin's fall to the dark side. Well, what this book does really well, and it does way better than the film, is it shows how Anakin realizes just how much of a trap the dark side is. And it really puts a pin in it on how tragic the character of Anakin Skywalker really is. And it's at the end of the book, and it's the scene where he's coming off of the operation slab, and he's completed his full transformation into Darth Vader as we know him in the original trilogy. where he's, got all the new bionic limbs, and now he's trapped inside that life support suit. So the suit almost takes on a double meaning. Not only is he physically trapped by the dark side because of that suit, but he's like spiritually trapped as well, because he realizes just how badly he screwed up, and he realizes he had so many points to turn it around to make things better, and how he brought about his own worst nightmare, and now he's all alone, and all he has is the dark side. And that's the trap, is the dark side lures you in, but it costs you everything to have it. So I thought that was really, really well done, and it was by far my favorite thing in the novel. It really tied everything together really, really well, and when I read it, I was like, wow, that was actually really well done, really well written, and did a fantastic job. And it's my favorite part of the book. As for things that I didn't like about the book, honestly, there wasn't much I can say that I hated about this book or didn't like. If there's anything I could say about this book that I didn't like, it would basically be the same complaint I would have about any book that was a novelization of a film I've already seen. The story is not going to hit the same way as a book where you don't know the story and you don't know how it's going to end. When I read through this, well, I've seen the movie like a bunch of times, so I know the story pretty well. I know how it's going to end. You're reading it, or I'm reading it more or less, to see what this author's take is on the material as opposed to the film, and what kind of spin he puts on it. And he did stuff with it that kind of made it his own. So it's not exactly like the movie. It's not just a cut and paste of the film. And I've already went over the reasons why that is. But like I said, if there's any complaint I could put towards this book, it's probably just that. The same complaint I would have against any book that was a novelization of a film that I've already seen. Now, should you go out and get this book and read it? If you're a fan of the Star Wars books and a fan of the EU, and you like to collect and follow the Star Wars paperbacks, then I'm going to say yes. I think you should go pick this book up if you're that big of a Star Wars fan, especially if you do enjoy reading the books. Because, as I said earlier, it's not like just a cut and paste of the film. The author does some things to kind of make the story a little bit more his own and give it a more unique experience than what you're going to have when you watch the movie. So for those reasons, I think you should pick up the book. As I mentioned earlier, I've read, I don't know, maybe 15 Star Wars books over the years. And I always enjoy reading a Star Wars book. It's always like one of my go-tos when I can't think of something else to read. It's always some escapist fun. I always have a good time reading them. And this one was no different. So if that's the case, I would definitely go out and pick up this book. The last thing that I wanted to talk about before I wrap up this video is I read this book over the spring. And I got probably about halfway through, and then I realized that this movie is 20 years old already. And I thought that was kind of crazy. The time has just gone so fast. It doesn't seem like it's been 20 years, but it has been. It's been 20 years since this movie came out. And then realizing that, once I was done reading this book, I went back to watch Revenge of the Sith again. And it's been a few years since I've watched the prequels. The last time I watched them, I binged them over a weekend. Watched Phantom Menace, Tacticals, and Revenge of the Sith. This time I didn't do that. I just picked out just Revenge of the Sith and watched it on its own. And that's something I'm going to talk about in a different video. But as I said before, overall, excellent book. And if you're a Star Wars fan of the Expanded Universe novels, then you should definitely give this book a try. And that's everything I have to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.